did you hear about the Nissan GTR? It's finally discontinued. Oh, I was under the impression they were developing an R36 Nissan GTR since it's been like 17 years since the R35 was unveiled. Yeah, well, I don't know if that's gonna happen. Especially since the guy who unveiled the car fled in a music box on a container ship. True story. Well, what about the Honda Nissan merger? I thought it was going really well. They backed out of it. Well, this is interesting. The Nissan R35 GTR has finally met its end.
My God! Eddie, you're dead!
And it's truly been a big dog in the performance car world for so many years. So today, let's talk about the Nissan R35, and of course, the future of the R36 GTR, and the future of Nissan in general, which is also an interesting story. Also, before we start, I'd greatly appreciate it if you hit the like button and comment down below what you think the R36 should be, because it truly does help me out in this algorithmic YouTube world that is so unpredictable. I know it can get annoying asking, but I greatly appreciate it, so thank you so much. So just to give you a little bit of perspective, the Nissan R35 GTR was unveiled when George W. Bush was still president. Halo 3 and Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare had just come out. So like the absolute peak of GameStop midnight releases. God, I miss those things. Now we just download everything. And the Great Recession hadn't quite happened yet. But don't worry, the youth had an amazing place to cope with the Great Recession. But as you can imagine, not amazing timing to reveal an expensive sports car. Admirably, in 2005, the GTR prototype looked pretty close to the real thing. I always appreciate it when a concept car comes out and it actually looks pretty close. The R35 also has had an extremely weird reputation. It's extremely strange how people talk about this car. It was one of the very first cars that I ever heard that the car was so good that it was too good, and that it wasn't enough like its predecessors like the R32, R33, and the R34 Skyline. And if you're a car nerd, you would also get very frustrated when somebody would call an R35 a Skyline, when we know as dorks, we know that it's not a Skyline, it was its own car and own platform. Oh yeah, by the way, the Infiniti G35 in Japan was also a Skyline. Had to get that out of my system. You ever see those people that have the G35s here in the US, but they put the Skyline logo on it?
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, don't worry about it. Midnight thoughts with David. But the R35 had this reputation that it was like driving a video game. And Jeremy Clarkson would always make comparisons to PlayStation. Like, oh yeah, this car very much feels like I'm driving a PlayStation. But for me, the R35 will always be the Need for Speed Pro Street car, because at the time it was still a concept, so it was very mysterious when you played the video game. Like, oh, that's the new GTR, I wonder what it's gonna be actually like. It was truly a force to be reckoned with though. And the Nissan GTR was also a massive benchmark for other car companies. And enthusiasts would debate, oh well, did the Ferrari 458 beat the R35 around the Nürburgring? It was always the R35 versus the world, because in our minds, the 35 was the underdog. By the way, whenever I did see people crash the R35 GTR, I'm like, you have some seriously bad driving skill to do that. It's one of the easiest fast cars ever to drive. Also, I admit, for a long time, it was also one of those cars that if I saw one, I would go, it's another R35 GTR. And then I would experience again by driving one, and I go, oh, right. I completely understand why they were so popular for so long, because it didn't have many compromises. You could daily drive one and it wasn't miserable. And then of course the modified car scene went absolutely bananas with this car. It's so funny to think that Nissan came out and said, there's no way anyone is going to crack our ECU in this car. There's no way. Then cut to like 3 months later and people were cracking the ECU. And in no time, companies like AMS were pioneers in the platform by getting, say, the first 7-second quarter mile. And it was finally the tuner car that could go head to head with the twin-turbo Lamborghini scene. Because at the time, the twin-turbo Lambos were basically unstoppable. I mean, a really fast modified R35 GTR is practically God mode. I reviewed one that was 1400 wheel and it dead hooked and just shot off like a rocket. It was insane. It's actually making me kind of sad because I have some fond memories of this platform. My friend Andrew, who was diagnosed with a very rare kidney cancer, started an entire charity around a Liberty Walk GTR. His dying wish was to build this car and go around the country promoting this charity. And he got to get dinner with the Liberty Walk guys and everything. It was just amazing. Rest in peace, Andrew. I miss you, man. But his project, the Driven to Cure project, captured people's imagination because the 35 GTR already had this amazing legacy. But then the R35 kind of became a running YouTube joke. Since it was a little bit more accessible financially, and I mean that with strong quotations, accessible. If you made a really good living, especially as a content creator, it kind of became the YouTuber's car. And it's almost like you would read the comment sections, and the comment sections, if I were to think of it, were like rolling their eyes, like, another YouTuber with an R35 GTR. And then a few months later, the famous "I'm selling the GTR" video. Goodbye. It was a car that was sort of relatable compared to the other supercars because it was a Nissan. I mean, the first gen GTR interior is not that impressive at all.
I mean, it's all right, like.
Not to mention the first generation transmissions would break a lot, especially under its world famous launch. Nissan would end up fixing the transmission issue, especially with its second generation and also the Black Edition, but then the price point skyrocketed. And then by the time the Nismo came out, it wasn't an underdog anymore. The price point wasn't anyway. Now you're spending over $200,000 for a Nissan GTR. I will say though, it was a much nicer car. Oh yeah, I also gave Chad Lemberg, who played Jesse in Fast and Furious, a ride in a Nismo R35. Good times. I think the VR38 will go down in history as one of the greatest performance car engines ever made, especially when it comes to 6-cylinders. When people are making over 3,000 horsepower through a 6-cylinder, that's insane. It's also so weird to see it becoming an engine swap now a lot more often. Also, the car in its lifespan had a huge improvement. The first generation went 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds, which is already barbaric. And then with the subtle improvements over the years, it got all the way down to 2.7, which is an engineering achievement on its own. So the R35 GTR, from enthusiasts, will go down as a legend. And some people might have thought it overstayed its welcome. With a car generation that lasted so long without major differences, it was hard for many to even get excited for the R35 and its new special editions and all that kind of stuff. Sure, they would have like new unveils with the new color trims and stuff like that, but that was kind of it. Along with their facelifts of their bumpers and headlights and stuff. So I think the R35 is kind of a victim of its own success in many ways. A car so good at the time that Nissan engineers almost had nowhere to go. And that's where I really don't blame Nissan for making the 35 so long. Especially Nissan's financial situation as of right now, where they just denied the terms of the Honda merger, which to me, I thought the Honda merger was going to be some good news. I said, oh, okay, so Nissan's gonna be in a better place pretty soon.
That's pretty good.
Nope, they turned it down.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I'm usually on the side of if you have a company, fix your company, get your shit together, and don't merge with somebody else. That's usually how I feel about things. Because a lot of the times you have to give up a lot of control. But I want Nissan to survive, and as of right now, I don't see it surviving with the course that they're on, at least from the outside. But the reason they turned the merger down, or at least the speculation of why they turned the merger down, is that they disagreed on how to restructure, along with how much control Honda wanted. Nissan allegedly wanted more control, but Honda obviously was like, dude, no. If the control you have at the moment isn't working, and it just seems like it's just never going to work, and you have a very successful car company that wants to take control and arguably help you. It does sound bad about Honda taking so much control, but it might save the brand. Plus, Honda did want to trim some of the fat and cut some jobs, obviously to save money and give Nissan a more clean slate. The original proposal was to have joint chief in control, but Honda was like, nah, not gonna work, buddy. And these companies have been rivals forever, so I guess it's not that surprising. Honda would have turned Nissan into a subsidiary, and with Nissan's current lineup and quality, I don't think it's that bad of a move. That's just me, because Nissan's cars overall feel a little outdated. Yeah, by the way, Mitsubishi was also in the conversation, but they should just stay building like AC unit and construction equipment at this point. I don't even know why they build cars for the US market at all anymore. The reason I bring up all this history of the R35 and also the Honda Nissan merger is that it's all connected to the R36 GTR. So with all this information we have, it doesn't look very good for a new R36 GTR anytime soon. The Nissan Z, that has technically been making sales since 2021, very limited sales since then, by the way, finally outsold the Toyota Supra, which has been out since 2019. But it's mostly because everybody who wanted to buy the Toyota Supra probably already bought the Toyota Supra. And according to Motor1.com's numbers, it isn't even that big of a lead. And I was a big supporter of the Nissan Z. I was like, it's 100% Nissan. It's a great new slate for the Z brand. I had this grand plan to buy a Nissan Z and turn it into a drift car and do demos in it and like all this kind of stuff. But it turned me off that you couldn't turn all the traction off and stability off. You could turn some of it off, but not all of it off. So then I would probably have to like wire in a VCS switch and all this crap like the 370Z. I didn't want to do that. Plus, I found the value just wasn't there. It was too expensive of a car for what you got, in my opinion. I found the Toyota Supra manual to be a better value for the same price. Not to mention, the Nismo was a much better car and didn't come in manual. And it was too expensive. So if that means the little brother and more affordable sports car of the Nissan lineup is struggling, what does that mean for a halo car, like an R36? In today's climate, I don't know if I see it. Not to mention, we're in a weird spot when it comes to developing supercars. If the R36 does come into existence, they would be crazy to make it an EV. And that was always the rumor, that the 35 was gonna be like the last combustion GTR. What a bad idea that would be. Now, I would be on board if they did some form of hybrid system to improve the performance. That would make sense. A full 100% EV in a GTR. I mean, the reason the GTR legacy is so powerful is first the Skylines, right? The RB26s sound so incredible. Then you have the VR38, which is just an absolute powerhouse. And then you just have silence with tire noise and rocks flying around. Nobody wants that. I don't care how fast it is. Godzilla is not roaring, you know what I mean? But I just hope that if it does come into development more than we know right now, I hope they truly listen to the consumer, because the Nismo Z was obviously not listening to the consumer. People don't care about lap times and their performance cars that they drive on the street every day. They want to enjoy it every day. Not to mention, if the timing was, say, right now when they were developing this car, in theory, it would go head to head with things like the Corvette ZR1, which nobody wants to do that right now at that price point. The ZR1 is just insane. It's absolutely incredible. You definitely don't want the twin-turbo V8 car going up against the Nissan GTR right now. Not a great idea. Maybe just let that pass, you know? The R36 would also need better research and develop materials, because technology's come so far in materials. You would need a different engine, probably a beefed up VR38. There's so much money that would have to go into this when Nissan just needs to survive right now. What are your thoughts on the future of the Nissan brand and, of course, an R36 GTR? What would be your perfect formula if you could make the perfect GTR? Put it down in the comment section below. And along with that, believe it or not, I actually relaunched my second channel that I almost never uploaded on for like 4 years. And it's a channel where I literally upload anything that's on my mind. Anything. So it's like pulling a subject out of a hat and you just don't know what you're gonna get. So if that interests you, make sure to head over to That Dude too. And along with that, make sure to check out projectcarexchange.com, where if you have a hard time finding a project car, it's catered, everything that's cool in the country, all in one place. all with honesty about what's done to the car and also what you're getting yourself into. And on that note, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.